Hi guys, I'm Danny, and I started a Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. And afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and share their knowledge and experience with you. I hope you enjoy it. Right on. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a beautiful day where I am. How about you?
Well, it was a beautiful day. Now it's about to be a beautiful evening.
Nice.
Indeed. And with that said, sorry about that. Some throat issues here, a little bit under the weather.
Change of season.
Yeah, and it always gets me. The program will be focused on three main questions. What do you do for a living? How did you get there? And how did you knew that this was the way to go? So tell us what you do for a living, please.
So, I specialize in the human voice, and that means two particular things for your listeners today. First of all, I am a voice coach, singing teacher, acting teacher, voice health therapist, voice scientist, all things related to the human voice, how people keep their voices, lose their voices, get their voices back, maintain their voices once they get their voices back. And then the other work that I do, of course, is as an actor, singer myself. So anything that has to do with the human voice and the way we communicate, whether it's through song, stage, speech, whatever it is, that's what I'm there for.
That's pretty good. That's pretty interesting. And out of pure curiosity, keep in mind, I know nothing about this. So, just pretend you're talking to a 6-year-old child, okay? How do you lose your voice? Like, because, when it gets like extremely cold, like I lose my voice for like a couple of days, but that's fine. I don't think you were talking about that though.
Yeah, there are many ways that lead people to lose their voices. One of them is overuse, right? If you just
Oh,
use your voice way too much throughout the day, there's only so much in the tank, right? Because it's made up of muscles as well, it's made up of tissue. Abusing the voice by yelling too much, for example, smoking cigarettes, a lot of alcohol, which can dry the throat. And then if you're drinking alcohol, your inhibitions are lowered, and then you're having a little more fun and you're speaking really loudly, or maybe you're yelling across the bar at your friends or something. So there's lots of ways that people can lose their voices.
I got you.
Unfortunately, the more sort of sad version is if somebody gets some sort of illness or a disease or something that affects the voice and the throat in general, or some neurological conditions can create challenges for the voice. Shania Twain has famously said that since she got Lyme disease, she has had a challenging neurological connection between her voice and her brain. So her voice really changed after she got Lyme disease. So that's a really good example of someone who hasn't lost their voice, but whose voice has really been modified by an illness. So there's lots of ways that we can lose our voice, and so my job is to help get people their voices back.
That's very interesting. I've heard cases, I've never seen one, or at least I haven't noticed, but I've heard of cases when children see something stressful and they kind of like, in general, lose their voice. They don't want to talk about it, like at all. So,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, because it's a very emotional thing, right? We express ourselves through our voice. And so when we can't use our voice, or we don't feel like we can really say what we want to say, it's a very strange experience for us as humans because we don't realize what we've got with our voice until it's gone, right? We're so used to
Yeah.
being able to express ourselves that once it's gone, it really is a little bit of an identity crisis. And so a lot of the work that I do is the emotion behind what it's like to lose your voice and why
I
you
agree
want to get it back.
100%. I saw the Little Mermaid. I mean, the real one, not this monstrosity that came recently. So yeah, I can agree with you. I know what you're talking about. The second question is, how did you get there? So were you like walking on the streets one day and you'd be like, let me do some voice thing, or is it something else there?
So it really started when I was quite young in the sense that my mum heard that I had a pretty natural voice and that I had a very good ear. I could match pitch very well. And so with playing the piano as a kid and singing in choir, I was encouraged to use my voice more often. And so I think there was a combination for many people of natural talents, but also the training. So I also was able to get undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees in the voice and in performance and singing, acting, all those things. And just years of study too, understanding the science and the theory behind the way the voice works. And then, of course, just doing it, right? When you get to use your voice professionally, it teaches you more than any book ever will, how to actually maintain your voice, how to take care of your voice. And so throughout my career, I've done some voiceover work, some narration work, as well as singing and acting. And so it really was a pretty natural progression where somebody said, "Hey, you've got a voice." Because, I didn't know at the time. I was so young. I just sort of was doing my thing and I liked singing. And before I knew it, I was an opera singer. It really was a very sort of
Nice.
surprising but natural thing.
I have a question, a side question. I honestly, and I could have Googled it, but I really didn't want to. I just want a professional's opinion. What is that deal with drinking a raw egg?
I don't know.
You know how the opera singers are drinking like raw egg?
I
And it's
haven't heard of this.
disgusting. I tried it once because I was, in high school, I was in the theater as well. And I saw, or I was told that it's good for the throat, and I tried it once and it was disgusting.
I
So
have
what's the deal with that?
I have not heard of this phenomenon. I'm always willing to say when I don't know. If I don't know things, I don't know things. And I've never heard this, and I've never ever suggested that any of my clients do that. So I'm gonna be Googling that later.
I don't know about good because you're like the fourth musician that I have on the podcast, and none of them ever heard. I'm gonna find out who told me about that, and we're gonna have a little bit of a work together. Because I'm almost certain that they made a prank on me at this time. That was 20
Possibly.
years ago, but it was that disgusting. I still remember it.
Oh, and the worst part is you don't even get any of the benefits from raw egg. Egg is way healthier for you when it's cooked anyway, so you got double
Yeah,
whammy there.
indeed. Lord have mercy. Anyway, crazy. I've been asking this question left and right. Oh, and there was another actor. I asked him that, and he didn't knew about that either.
I think
Good
you may have
God.
gotten pranked. Yeah.
I'm gonna Google it anyways. So the third question is, how did you knew that this was the way to go? And you already know. The reason I'm asking is because a lot of people, especially young people, but not only, are going through this nonsense, graduating because you have to have a degree to fix your life, and spending sometimes years or even decades, and I know of those cases, doing something you really hate, but you graduated and now you kind of stuck with it. And it's 2023, right? So in today's age, there's no such thing as stuck with it. Like, you can change your profession, like you can go to in another field entirely, and it will take you like half or maybe 1 year to learn the basics before you start the job. So there's no
Hmm.
such thing as stuck with it, but in their minds there is, and it makes people miserable.
Yeah.
It makes everybody miserable, and the colleagues around them, everybody. And it's a dangerous thing, man. I'm going to be honest. It's really dangerous because it's dangerous for the person, for the colleagues, for their spouse, the children if they have some. It's not okay because there's no way you can be doing something for 9, 8, 10 hours a day. Depends how far you are from there. It's something that you don't like, and to be here, you're gonna be miserable. I'm not talking about IT guys. I know a lot about IT guys that really don't like their jobs, but at the end of the month, when you see that paycheck, they can manage. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about normal people. And I love the IT guys, but there's no way I can consider them normal people 99% of the time. I remember I met an IT girl. She's a pretty good looking girl. I didn't know she was working in the IT. We went on a date, and for the whole 2 hours, I had the answers like yes, no, 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 yes, and it kind of makes you feel uncomfortable. So definitely, I'm not. If any of the IT guys are offended, first of all, if you are, you're not a real IT guy because you know what I'm talking about. And second of all, I'm not taking it back. So how did you know that this was the way to go? Because you kind of covered it already. You had that natural talent of yours, because it has to be natural, otherwise you wouldn't have been so good at it. But in all fairness, you probably will agree with me that there are a lot of people with a lot of talents, and yet they go against them and they go in another direction. You said you were kind of navigated by your folks, but you didn't know that sometimes that's not a recipe for success. So
Absolutely.
how did you knew and how did you felt that this was the actual way?
Well, I have an interesting answer to your question in the sense that I didn't know it was necessarily the way, to be honest. And you kind of hinted at it just a second ago. Because I was going on a sort of raw talent that I didn't know that I had, I actually didn't really take the time when I was a teenager to discover or decide if or why this was for me. I think I was just sort of on that train because people were saying I was good at it and I was enjoying being on stage because I don't mind sharing with your listeners that I was very bullied in school. I went through a lot of really, really bad bullying in school. And when I was on stage, no bully was touching me, right? It was a very safe place and the audience was clapping. And so it gave me a little bit of a
Yeah, not
sense
only
of,
you weren't touched, you were actually admired, and that feeling is pretty awesome.
yeah, it's not an unimportant thing when you're a teenager, right? It gave me a sense of purpose. The thing is, as much as I was good at it and liked it, I didn't take the time to make sure I really loved it for the right reasons. And so I'm a really interesting case of someone who's definitely done a little bit of the roller coaster with how he feels about his career because by the end of my master's degree, I thought to myself, okay, do you want to do this? So I took some time to step back and I said, okay, well, here are the degrees you have. Here's what you've done with your career so far. What is it that you like the most about the human voice? And I realized it was the teaching part. It was the communication part. It was the helping other people with their voices. And so what you were also hinting at a few moments ago is that when we're young, we don't have the time or perhaps even the guidance from our adult figures to really understand why we want to do something or all of the options that are out there. Because unfortunately, our school system really, really favors science and math and the very sort of classically intelligent subjects. And the problem is maybe that there's a boy in your class who's a mechanic. Maybe there's a boy in your class who's a girl who's, or a boy, or it doesn't matter, who's a dancer. Maybe there's, maybe there are other kinds of things that people want to do with their lives. But I feel that we get this sense of, doctor, lawyer, teacher, the sort of typical professions that you're supposed to do. And so when I kind of did that around 25-ish, mid 20s, when I sort of had my, do I really want to do this
In
moment?
all fairness, you look like you're 16. So yeah.
Denny, you can stay. You can stay. I like it. Thank you.
I'm 32, and I look like I got back from the front of the First World War, not the second, the first.
You
They
look
say
great,
you
man.
as old as you feel about it, and that means I actually won the Trojan War.
You look great, man. You look great.
Yeah, it's the lightning.
It's the lighting, good lighting. But yeah, mid 20s, I had that thing, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, I wish this were more a part of high school curriculum. I wish that we had a better ability to get to know a little bit more about what professional life looks like so that we don't just have these 4 to 5 ideas of what our career is supposed to look like, based on the things that we tend to favor in school. And so I'm actually a really interesting case of someone who does really like what he does. I really, really do. But I didn't arrive there the perfect way. I didn't necessarily know that this is what I wanted to do. So I offer that story to sort of be a middle ground because, we often talk about you love it or you hate it. Well, I've actually experienced a bit of both. And so for me, knowing what I wanted to do came from when I realized that teaching gets me out of bed. I love teaching. When I get to teach all day, I can't get out of bed quickly enough. It makes me so, so happy. And I don't feel like I'm betraying myself. I don't feel like I'm betraying who I am at all. It feels so aligned with who I am to teach people. And as the old saying goes, see the light bulb go on with my students when they get something.
You can see it in
Oh,
their eyes, especially when they're getting it.
oh, they just light up. And
Yeah.
that is my favorite thing in the world. So I knew that teaching, not necessarily performing, but I knew that teaching was for me because it feels so good and it feels so like myself. I don't have to be anyone but myself.
In all fairness, without my personal opinion, of course, but without the performing, probably you wouldn't be able to be teaching because it was a stepping stone, nonetheless, experience that you kind of had to go through.
100%. No, you are. I don't regret a thing
Yeah.
because it was going through that that made me realize, okay, I'm good at this. I'm a good performer. I've done well. I've had a good career, but now I want to teach other people how to do that. So it was, you're absolutely right, a nice way for me to go through it. So it wasn't a devastating thing, it wasn't a huge deal, but it was definitely a great moment for me to say, okay, you've done that, that gave you access, that opened doors to the opportunity to teach, so go walk through and teach.
Absolutely. You mentioned schools, and I wanted to ask, is this like a high school thing? And the reason I'm asking is because high schools here are actually severely segregated. You have a high school only for languages, not only, but 90% languages. High
Oh.
school, 90% for mechanics, uh, for arts, for singing, for everything. We, I am not certain. I really have to check, but I think we have high school only for medical, the people that are going to be medical personnel and
Hmm.
doctors.
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
go to this high school from 8th to 12th grade.
Yeah.
And, I think that's actually better because once you are at the university or start a job, you actually have enough experience. The technical high schools they're like really, really segregated. They have their own places, own laboratories and everything. And I think after 10th grade, the last 2 years are like kind of there, but not exactly because you're working most of the time on what you've already
Right.
learned.
Right.
So once you get there to be an engineer or an architect, you kind of already know the basics. Isn't that the case over there as well? Because it's a pretty good thing.
No, here in Canada, you have a very general education in high school, and there are some what we call performing arts high schools where kids will audition for grade 9, right, grade 9 through 12, and that's because they know that they want to do. But remember, my feeling, and this is just my opinion, but they think they know they want to do that,
Yeah.
right? Because they're teenagers. So having experienced that a little bit myself, I love the breadth and the depth of the education. I love how much you get to just dive into that. I think that's wonderful. I would offer that a general education is always good for life, right? There's an
Yeah.
education for life too. So I, to be honest, am kind of in a middle ground. I think that a general education should always be there, but I do like the idea of encouraging people to do the things that they enjoy, the things that they're good at, and hopefully the things they enjoy being good at. Right?
Absolutely.
Because you can be good at something, but if it's not necessarily your cup of tea, you're not going to like it. And that was sort of my little momentary crisis was, okay, I'm really good at this, but do I really want to do this? So I think that I still believe in a general education, but I also believe that pinpointing, if you really feel like you know what you want to do, I think that can be very helpful too. But no, right now in Canada, it's still pretty general in high school.
No, general education here is from 1st to 7th grade.
Okay.
And 7 years is pretty much enough to
Yeah.
figure the kid out,
Yeah.
see what it's good at and what's not good at, so that you can actually aim the kid afterwards. Because after 15, 14, 15, yes, those are kids, the teenagers, but they're not exactly children anymore. Now you
No, for
kind of
sure.
have to have a different approach.
And Denny, remind me where you are?
I'm in Bulgaria, Southern Europe.
Okay.
So, but not that's like all around Southern Europe in general. I think
Hmm.
it's mostly for. I graduated in Denmark, and the place I lived at was next to it was a high school and university all combined, and it was only for agriculture.
Hmm.
And they had the whole field and trucks and everything. They had beehives, so to teach them how to be beekeepers and something like that. So yeah, I think it's all over Europe, but I think it's a pretty good thing to have the general thing and then just to navigate for high school.
Absolutely. Yep. That's why they call it high school because it's a higher education, right?
Absolutely. can you give a little bit of an advice to those that are just now entering the workforce? They're confused, they don't know what they're doing. Some words of wisdom.
Some words of wisdom is the only thing in your life that you can control is what's going on right in front of you. So, even if you're not totally sure what you want to do yet, even if you're not completely convinced that this is the job for you as you're exploring, the advice I always give is still show up on time. Still do your best. Still be kind, because in being the best that you can be, you don't have to be perfect, just the best that you can be, that's actually when doors start to open. That's when you start to discover who you are. But if you're in a space where you don't even want to show up, you're going to be so distracted from being in the moment that you're going to miss the opportunity to see the little things that are popping up in front of you. We get a lot of hints in our life that we don't see because we're so distracted by feeling miserable. But if you just choose to be there, to show up, and to do your best with what you've got, you will see those little hints present themselves, and little windows start to open, and then a bigger door starts to open, and you'll meet someone who says, hey, you're good at that, or oh, I really like the way you did that. And before you know it, you don't have to be, as they say, no man is an island, right? You don't have to be alone in the journey. You've got people around you. And that's why if someone says, hey, maybe this job isn't for you, I think you'd be good at that, that's not an insult. That's actually a piece of encouragement that might help you find something better for you. So yeah, my advice is always, as difficult as it can be, I know, just still be there on time, be kind, do your best work, and you will find your way.
I have a perfect example for that. Back then when I was working at HP, and there was this guy, you just know when somebody's not stupid, but they really don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I said a one-on-one meeting with him. I said, okay, what's your problem? Because, his KPI was terrible, but we were at the same team. So his mistakes reflected on my score as well. That was a problem. He said, listen, I hate doing it, but I gotta, because it's a big company, and it carries a weight in the name. I said, no, it doesn't. It's good to work in a big company. I work in a big company, but I don't do it for the name. I do it because they had an open position and I had the necessary skills. That's all. Literally, that's all. I can go to another company, even bigger or smaller, do the same thing. Actually, I get the same money. So
Right.
that's about it. And when I told him, it was exactly what you said. Like his eyes were open. Like it was back then. It was a financial department, so he was with me in the financial department, and I think 6, 7, 8 months later, he became a lift technician, elevator technician, and he was happy. He was pretty happy.
There you go.
So you're right, but he always showed on time, and I'm always you're exactly right about that when you said show on time, be polite, and everything, because the whole point of the podcast is to be a good example. And normally, I hate telling that story on the podcast, but whatever now. So we have this thing, me and a couple other friends. Every single July, we go to a specific hotel, go to a specific beach here at the Black Sea, and we get wasted for days, like blackout drunk. And one day I was with them, because we've been doing this for years now. I think second or third week of July, it depends on how it goes. And I'm waiting at that bar that we're always there. Because it's like that every year. It has to be a new owner of the bar. It's how it goes. So and the bartender was looking at me like, are you Danny? No. Yeah, it's you. We have common friends on Facebook. I saw the podcast, and I turn around to my friends and say, no, there's no way all of us were going back to the hotel and we can get wasted over there by the pool. But I'm not going to be sitting here talking about being polite and everything and get wasted in front of that boy. That's not how things are going. So I took them all with me. But yeah, you're definitely right. Yeah, you gotta be polite all the time.
Well, you never know who's going to be there, right?
Thank God she recognized me. Can you believe that if she didn't say anything and we start acting like apes? Good Lord.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know what kind of age we live in. With that said, Mark, huge thank you for being with me, man. I appreciate it a lot.
My pleasure. This was great. Thank you.
We should do part 2 sometimes.
Absolutely.
Right on. Have a nice day.
You too.
Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Gap, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.